Okay, here's one. What's the average? And I'm going to give this one to you, Michael. It's not. I think the question is actually unfair, but I think you should reflect more whether it's changing. What's the average hold period for angel and VC investments these days? In other words, I suppose. I mean, it could be anything. But I was interested in Luke's point about some of his best investments have been, 10 years.
I would actually agree with him. The majority of the early stage deals I do, I always tell people, look, I'm looking to hold them for 7 to 10 years. That's what I expect. VCs, because they're coming in after I've invested, probably will more be around the 3 to 5 year mark, depending on what the restrictions are of their funds. But I've been lucky and I've had a few earlier exits, but the majority of the companies I invest in are at least 5 years. And as long as I see as it's my own money, I don't have to report to anybody, except maybe my wife. But as long as I feel there's growth happening within the business, I'm happy to actually stay with the business and support it as much as I can.
Yeah. Okay. Roger, one for you. Is startup funding dead in the UK? Money seems only to exist for revenue-producing companies.
I don't think it's dead in the UK. I think over the last 3 years or 4 years, I think it's become harder for us to fund non-revenue generating businesses or businesses that don't have a sustainable revenue. But I think I was caught during the break earlier and someone asked me how much of the £80 million a week that was being lent into the early stage business. And I don't have that statistic, but I've said that I will find out. But my sense is that certainly around the Enterprise Finance Guarantee Scheme, a lot of that is in the early stage business, which is what it was designed for when the government launched it on the back of the previous, its sort of pre-runner, which was the Small Firms Loan. So I don't think it's dead, but undoubtedly, as Luke alluded to, it is harder to come by. And I think certainly the stuff that we're doing locally in the London area is hopefully giving us a better insight into what businesses are doing and what challenges they're facing, so that we can be a little bit more proactive to it rather than reactive to it.
It goes back to David's gone, but what he was talking before about traction in early stage or pre-revenue businesses, some evidence of traction.
Absolutely. They are more difficult, undoubtedly.
Yeah, sure. Luke, what is stopping the creation of a 26-year-old billionaire in the UK, if anything, now?
I think nothing. I think, America is much bigger than we are, so the chance of them doing it, and they've got a much bigger domestic market. I think there's no doubt that, especially on the West Coast, they've always had more of a science and technology bias in terms of, education and where the talent flows, and that's a great help. Possibly, their capital structure in terms of, venture money available is a major help. But I don't think realistically there is any specific structural reason or cultural reason why we cannot produce world-beating technology businesses. I suppose one factor that does come into play is that a lot of our best startups and early stage businesses get bought, and there is this slight tendency amongst successful individuals in this country to sort of run out of steam and take the money and run, if you like, earlier rather than they do in America. I think in America they breed an extraordinarily ambitious sort of entrepreneur who doesn't just want to be worth 10 million or 50 million, but they want to be worth $1 billion. And we seem to have fewer of those people. I don't know why, cultural or what. But I think fundamentally we can do it and we should do it. And I don't think we should sort of give up with that dream because, luck plays a part and numbers play a part. But I think we're pretty good at invention and innovation. And there is no fundamental reason in my mind why we can't breed another Google or Facebook or whatever it is.
Great. Who's got a sort of urgent pressing question? We were sitting next door to each other. If you could bring the mic down here, I'm going to just, while the mic's waiting, I'm going to put another question to you, Michael. What's an investable management team when none of the team has done it before? And that will be relevant. There'll be many in this room.
That's a lovely question. What I'm normally looking for, because I am looking on the whole for very early stage businesses, and normally it means the entrepreneur hasn't done it before. So what I'm looking for is somebody who knows the sector, understands the business that they're getting into, but maybe have not actually had run a business. They don't actually have the skill sets in terms of I would call the back end stuff, in terms of how to do forecasts, how to actually, employment contracts, all of that stuff. And that's where what you should be looking for is investors who actually pass that information, who will work closely with you, let you get on with the job of running a business, and have the investors actually support you to actually give you the foundations to do that. So I think one of the things I'm always looking for is an entrepreneur who's actually willing to work with the investors. And it was kind of mentioned earlier, not just looking for dumb money. I mean, I've met quite a few investors or entrepreneurs who've literally said, just give me the money and I'll do everything. I don't need you. I don't, I know what I'm doing. Very rarely will you have an entrepreneur who's 21, 22 years old who knows everything about running a business. A lot of the investors that you've got hopefully coming on board investing in your business have invested in 10 or 20 businesses. They've seen all the do's and don'ts of managing and setting up a business. Milk them for everything that they're worth. And I will be happy to give. If I've invested in the business, I will do everything in my power to help support you. But I've got to feel that you actually want that relationship when I make the investment. So that's one of the things that I really do look for.
Okay, great. Have you got the mic down there? Yeah.
Yeah, I have. It's just one very fast question for Luke, really. I want to know, do you, A, send cigars to that bank manager that told you to go, or did you ever go back to him and say, thanks, now what am I worth? And I'll turn your loan down.
It was an investment bank, and he became the deputy chairman of the Bank of England. And I met him and indeed the chairman of the takeover panel, and I met him on various occasions, and we get on. And I'm very grateful to him actually for. He didn't know that I really should have been out working for myself, but no, it was the right thing to do.
Okay. Another couple of questions. Yeah, the lady here. Thanks, Claire. Thank you. Afraid we are going to have to rush through them, but thank you.
Luke, you mentioned that you didn't tend to invest in single founder businesses. Could you expand on why that is, and perhaps give some advice as to, if you are a single founder at possibly pre-seed stage, what you would do about that?
I've always been a believer in partnerships, and they don't always last forever, and they don't always work. But the truth is, I've always worked with partners, and to me, especially if you are starting on that scary road of, building a business, to have someone, or possibly more than one partner with you, working alongside, both of you supporting each other, bringing different skills to the fray, I think it's advisable. There are the odd character who does it on their own, but for example, even Richard Branson, he had a partner for many years in the early phase. Most people actually, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and you name them, they all had partners. So I'm not saying it's the only way. You can be Alan Sugar if you want. I wouldn't want to be Alan Sugar. But, you can do it all on your own. It's possible. But my advice is find a partner, or certainly consider it, depending on your personality and what your business plan is, because I think it makes it less lonely, and I think 1 + 1 can equal more than 2.
Yeah. Okay, there was another question.
Would you accept the premise that angel investors in this country aren't very good and are actually very inexperienced, and in comparison to San Francisco, relatively clueless?
Tell us what you really think.
I mean by that is that there's a entirely different class of investor in San Francisco than there is here, or would you accept that premise?
All right, okay. I do think that part of the issue with angel investing, it's a much newer thing in the UK. So in terms of experience-wise, I think, especially in the West Coast, they've had more successes. More people have been involved in it. But too many people in the UK, in terms of angel investors, are investing because of tax reasons, not necessarily because they want to get involved with early-stage businesses. I have met some extremely good angel investors. The problem, I think the thing is that in this country we don't really talk about them that much. In America, they're much better at talking themselves up. Quite often when I get in a room filled with angels, we normally talk about our failures. We don't, I think it's just an English mentality, is we don't want to feel like we're showing off when we talk about all the successes we have. And I think in America as well, they're not confined by the tax reason. You know, with EIS, you've got to do ordinary shares, and you know, people just say, well, I've got a bit of money left over, let's just shove it into this business and we'll see how it's going. And their early stage development, and they do have Silicon Valley. You know, they do have this wonderful place where, you know, it's not just in Silicon Valley. You've got in New York, you've got in Boston. They've got these hubs where a lot of early stage businesses are growing, they're working together, they've got the mentality there to take risks. And that is where the people have flocked to, and they're much more willing to work with each other. I think we're beginning to get that here, but I would say we're further behind than where they are in America. I think a lot of the stuff that you're seeing here in terms of Silicon Roundabout and all that area that they're talking, I think that will actually generate a much better success rate for early stage investors. And to be quite honest, we don't actually have any we don't have a Facebook, we don't have a Groupon or anything like that. I think when you get that, more people will take it more seriously.